Paige Velasquez Budde never planned to become a CEO. At age 16, she was touring as a working musician, featured in Cosmo Girl, and performing with Radio Disney. But thanks to parents who prioritized normalcy over fame and mentors who spotted her leadership spark early, Paige shifted from performing to building brands. Today, she's the CEO and founding partner of Zilker Media, where she helps entrepreneurs and thought leaders accelerate trust through authentic digital presence. In this episode, we talk about the rise of personal brands, what Gen Z gets right and wrong about online identity, and how Paige hacked her way into mentorship by cold messaging dozens of Austin CEOs when she was just getting started. It's a conversation about strategic leadership, showing up with intention, and redefining what a first impression really means.
Welcome to Founding Up, Uncharted, your sidekick for life. So excited to be here today and have all of you here present with me and talk about mentorship.
It's a ladies' show.
Such a great thing. And today we've got Paige in the house.
Yeah. Thanks for being
excited to be here with you all. This is neat.
Gloria, you want to give a little feedback on you? I know that people know us, but this is your second show with us. Excited to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy to be here. So I am investment advisor and a financial planner. So that's my trade. But what I really do is help business owners foster clarity in their work and also help them, really create a vision, for getting the things that they truly want. So,
and talk about the work you're doing with your book.
Yes. Also, I am working on writing a book. And so this book is very much of a passion project. I worked with several business owners and we have clients that are business owners. And I found a lot of common frustration and struggles. And so I was thinking, well, what are the resources out there, to help these people? And there really isn't anything. And I like to call financial illiteracy a global silent epidemic because people don't really talk about it, and we don't learn about it in school.
It's taboo?
Yeah, it's taboo within
Don't talk about money, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics.
Yep.
You missed the sex one. But.
Yes. And, people just, it's come down to they really don't know what they don't know, And also, even asking the right questions about finances, whether it's personal finances or business, they really don't know. And so with this book, my intention is to help this and the next generation, have just a smoother, clearer path on how to build or excel in a business. And also, this generation will have the most entrepreneurs of any generation in the past.
Love that. Yeah.
And new entrepreneurs. And so, so really just, again, wanting to just help more people with what I know and interview others so they can share their, knowledge and experiences.
Well, I love what you said last time, roadmaps, because that's what it's about. When I built Founding Austin, that's what it was. It's like going to interview 300 entrepreneurs and really what's that map look like for being an entrepreneur? And that's what it was designed. But you're doing it more focused on the finance side. And why that's so important is because it's a craving. It's part of the reason Founding Up exists is because when I was in finance, one of the biggest things that I saw was $1.6 trillion in college debt is what this country's in. And to put that in perspective, and it's growing by 8% a year, whereas normal inflation is 3%. To put that in perspective, it's the second only to housing, and it will overtake housing as the biggest debt thing in this country by 2040.
And healthcare.
Wow.
Yep. And so when I saw that, I just thought it just didn't sit right with me because what we're doing is we're straddling students with debt and it just changes the trajectory of their lives. So we've got to do something about it. And in the work that we're doing, one of the things that we do, we go out and have, we teach at A&M. We were just there a couple of weeks ago. The 250 students we talked about this, asked them, where do you think AI is going to, where do you want the most impact for AI for you? Number one thing was finance. And to me, it's just not right when an 18-year-old can get a $100,000 loan for school without understanding what that loan is how they're going to impact for their life. So with that, we're like, all right, let's get a financial expert in the house to be able to answer some of those questions and talk about that. So thanks for being here. Now let's get to our guest mentor and talk about what you do. Well, let's give us background,
Sure.
full name, the whole.
Absolutely.
I just said Paige. I didn't really introduce the full name of this.
It's a hard name to say,
yeah.
Velasquez Budde. But Gloria, I don't want to follow up your introduction. That's tough.
Oh, no.
You do so many cool things.
you.
And it's really funny. Before I get into my introduction, I just spoke with my business partner, Rusty Shelton, at the University of Texas. They have an entrepreneurial finance course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just believe that's so brilliant. And the fact that students these days, are learning how to become an entrepreneur, getting a degree in that's a little bit hard for me to fathom in a sense, because to me, a lot about entrepreneurship is just getting in and doing it.
Right.
But I think my partner, Rusty, and I both laughed because, I think the thought of us as communications majors going and talking to a Macomb School of Business, which is a very
Elite
business school class about finance and entrepreneurial finance is just a bit of an oxymoron in our world,
Yeah.
But very, very important. So I love that you also pour into students as well. But just about my background, so co-founding partner and CEO of Zilker Media. So what we do simply at Zilker Media is we build trusted leaders and companies. We do that through PR, branding, digital marketing. And really, I would say the biggest thing that we're seeing in the landscape today, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, is it is extremely hard for small to medium-sized businesses, the everyday businesses, to go out and compete against the larger institutions with hefty marketing budgets. And the best way to start differentiating yourself is by bringing a thought leader, a key person, spokesperson alongside the company's brand to help kind of be that Trojan horse and to be an on-ramp back to the company. The population in general, and I think we've seen this time and time again the past 4 years, we're losing trust when it comes to companies and organizations, rightfully so, across the U.S. So in order to start differentiating and being able to accelerate trust, we have to start leading with people.
Yeah. Why do you think we're losing trust?
People are starting to project a lot more bias on what they're consuming. And there's also a lot more selection now when it comes to what you put your attention to. Podcasts like this, somebody can listen to this and get, 45 to 60 minutes of the content that they're exactly going to look for from people that they trust and respect.
Got it.
Versus mass media, there's become a lot of distrust.
Right.
Because there's a lot of control there.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
But
they
now-
get broken up every 30 seconds.
That's
with an
right.
ad.
That's right.
Unless you pay the premium to have no
And
ad.
you're watching a 60-minute segment and getting 5 to 7 minutes of what you've actually gone there to get. And, it's controlled by institutions.
That makes a lot of sense. And I just kind of relate it back to finance because I've spent a lot of my career in finance. And we used to have a saying is whenever you'd pick up a money magazine or like that, it's like, if you want to know what articles they're going to be writing about, what funds they're going to be writing about, look at the ads first. Because that's what's going to steer the commentary. And the same thing, there's an ongoing joke about Jim Cramer on CNBC. Is like, if you ever want to make money, listen to him. And there's actually an inverse Cramer fund. Everything he recommends is a fund that buys the opposite.
Yes.
And that's what makes money.
Yes.
But the reason behind it is because people go on there a lot of times to talk up things they're about to sell. And so they want the public to buy it so they can, win on that. So now that, you pointed it in that direction, now I understand what you mean by distrust. It is because of what people are hearing.
That's exactly right. And the other thing to think about too is, when we're talking about accelerating trust, it all happens with people, and thinking about how can organizations go up and actually compete against these bigger marketing budgets. There's just no way you're going to outspend a corporate logo
Right.
when you're a small to medium sized business.
But you can do it with knowledge.
But you can do it with knowledge. You can become your own media outlet,
Right.
and you don't need to be, there's no longer that gatekeeper there where you only can get to your audience through the traditional media or advertising.
Yeah.
If you do it in a strategic way, which, doesn't mean you have to have a big PR budget. It doesn't mean you have to have a full marketing team. All it means is you have to think about, what am I already doing behind the scenes as a leader that I could do more visibly to make more of an impact and have more scalability.
And you have to be authentically yourself.
Yes,
and
because
promote that.
it doesn't work unless you are authentic. And I'm excited for this conversation focused on Gen Z, because I'm very passionate about the way we think about our online presence and the way that we think about ourselves as brands. We no longer have the luxury of just meeting somebody in person and that being the first impression that we get. First impressions are happening through AI generated search. They're happening through Google. All of that happens before you ever get an email, meet someone in person. And so the footprint that you build online is so incredibly important. And I grew up in that generation where I think I was maybe in later years of high school, college, before my online impression was generated. But I can't imagine thinking back and going, oh my goodness, if my life was entirely online and I didn't have any knowledge or education of what that meant for me and my future, that has to be really tough.
No, it makes, as you were talking about that, it makes made me think of a couple of things. One, often, I know at Nest, whenever we talk about some of the clients that would come through, sometimes you have clients that just show up and they're ready to do business because they've done hours of search online already. And because there's so much content there, they're like, they are already sold before they show up and meet. So this digital presence is a thing. So on one side, it's that. On the other side, the other day, I sent a post to my daughter. Before she even read the post, she went and looked up who this person was, kind of made a judgment of the person just on their digital, on their social media, and then decided whether she wanted to believe it or not.
That's right.
I was like, wow, I just was sending you a post. I was just going to read this. Well, before I understand if I'm going to trust this, I want to see who this person is.
And
digitally.
It's crazy. When you think about a first impression online, first impressions are made in snap judgments. Online, you have 50 milliseconds. That's a tenth of a second. Before someone decides, are they going to trust you or are they not? So the visuals, somebody didn't have enough time to read anything in that, 50 milliseconds. So it's really the visuals that you're conveying online that determine that first impression. And just realizing you have to control as much as you can. And I feel like this is maybe where the resistance happens. You have Gen Z who's been online their whole life, but maybe haven't thought about strategically what that first impression is. And then you have older generations who have resisted being online, and they think, they make the comment, I hear this from a lot of leaders in older generations of, hey, I don't need to be online. It's, well, you're online whether you like it or not now. It's whether or not you're controlling it.
And if you're not online, it raises a question too.
That's right.
Because the first thing that comes to me, my mind, whenever I try to look someone up, some guy called me the other day and they had some really good, tax, something or other. And I said, well, what's your website? Well, we're not online. I'm like, shady. Like, that's the first thing that came into mind, even though it may just completely be wrong on my assumption, but that was just the assumption. So, but enough of that. Let's jump into some mentorship questions. And how I like to kind of start the conversation is kind of take you back to, so that people know what you're doing now, but what was 16-year-old Paige like? Like what were the dreams and aspirations? Because I like to see the through line of how that changed, because a lot of times it is impacted by people.
Yes.
So
very much. My 16-year-old self would never imagine I would be sitting where I am today. In
this popular podcast.
Exactly. In a room with you all. But When I was 16, I was in what I call my first iteration of my career. I grew up as a working musician. So
so cool.
I traveled the US. I was signed to management. I was doing stuff with Radio Disney. I was songwriting. Do y'all remember Cosmo Girl magazine?
Oh, yeah.
So I was doing, stuff in there.
Wow.
That's so cool.
And I always thought I was going to be a musician. I loved the way that, music moved people and the power that you could have through that. But growing up, my parents were extremely adamant that through all of that, I still had a normal life. So it was almost Hannah Montana on a very low scale. I was not a celebrity at all. But I was, going out and doing gigs on the weekends and nights, and then I would go to school during the day. And I just had this wonderful mentor alongside my parents, but this wonderful mentor in one of my classes who really pushed me into leadership roles, student government leadership and different things like that. And he also just really made me see potential beyond, what there is fulfillment in leadership and what that could look like, and how to get people to think about problems in a different way and open up, mindsets so that you have collective solving towards a problem and motivating others. And he really made an impact on my life a lot more than I had realized at that moment, because I actually use a lot of the things that I learned from him more in my role today. But kind of going back to the musician side of things, if it wasn't for my parents, I see a lot of other friends that were also on that same circuit that do have global careers, and where they are personally is very different from where I am. And I am very grateful for my parents to instill that normalcy. And, when management teams or record labels would come in and say, we want you to cut your hair, we want you to sing this song, or we want you to dress this way. They never once, when I said, I don't like that, or I would get upset about it, they're like, we're not doing it.
Sure.
They didn't, to them, me being successful was not worth sacrificing things that were really important to me and on a human level. And they're like, you know what? You don't need that. And we don't want you to do that if that's not something you're excited about.
I love that. They helped you keep your agency.
It did. And I think it's just so important, because I also started building that entrepreneurial spirit of, hey, if something, I don't have to conform.
Right.
If I see a way to do things differently, I need to stay that course, because that's important when you feel that and when you hear that, and you can build something yourself. Now, music back then is very different than it is now. Now a musician can just go to TikTok or YouTube and completely surpass any of that traditional stuff. So I love it's where it is now, but that ultimately is what made me decide to pursue an education versus a career, is because I got so bogged down and just so upset about every opportunity needed me to conform to something I wasn't in order to be good enough.
And I often describe people being in a box because it's just the easiest way for me to kind of see society. Back when I was doing financial planning, that's what I would see, is there's just like this parents, the whole society as a whole. It's like, here's what you need to do. You need to go to school, you find yourself in school, you get a career, and it just kind of like this, almost like a cattle chute. You just got to do these things, right? And where's the questioning? Where's the agency? Where's the doing things different?
That's right.
And it's all, it was all done in good spirit, a good reason behind it. I mean, parents wanted the best for their kids, and so that was like, let's go. But then that turned into a lot more expense, a lot more that, and things like that. And it was just, the outcomes weren't what one thought.
Or what they really wanted.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's what I appreciate so much about my parents that I probably didn't at the time, was they never wanted something more than I did and pushed me towards that. It was very much supportive. And if somebody told me they didn't like me, my parents were like, listen, not everybody is going to like you. That is life. And they really let me figure it out. They really let me, very much supportively, but they weren't going and doing things for me. And I believe that also instilled a work ethic, a drive, an entrepreneurial spirit within itself. And education became a dream to me because I was a first generation college graduate.
Very cool.
So it was kind of uncharted territory.
Oh?
And this is I love that. Staying on brand here.
Yeah.
I did not know that. But it was uncharted territory that nobody in my family had even, aspired toward or had an opportunity to aspire toward. So I very much was kind of navigating that on my own and figuring it out. And it was exciting. And of course, they were nervous because it was the unknown. But it was a dream to be able to go off and do that. So when I went to the University of Texas, which was absolutely my dream school, I moved to Austin, which was the biggest city. I'm from Odessa, Texas, which is West Texas, and Dan and I talked about that.
I went to Tech, so Lubbock.
Okay.
Experienced some of it.
Yeah, so everybody I knew went to Tech. That is the experience for, that's what I knew about colleges at that point.
Do you know what comes to mind when you say Odessa, Texas?
What?
The last place I had Shakey's Pizza. Remember Shakey's Pizza?
Yes.
So
that brings
funny.
me back.
They had these wonderful, it's this place that not only has great pizza, I'm not sure if they're still around, but they called them Rojos in Odessa, but I was first introduced in Amarillo, and they call them Mojos. But because
the Permian and Mojo,
Mojo, they just changed the names to Rojos. But they were these wonderfully sliced potatoes that were fried and battered and along with chicken. So it was like fried chicken and potatoes in this platter along with chicken. It was just like, okay, who does that? But it was just wonderful. So good. Anyway.
Yes. But
Dan's memories is like
West Texas, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it.
Oh, that's the thing about Midland, Odessa is I lived there for about 6 years, and they have some good restaurants. It's like you're in the middle of nowhere, but these restaurants that show up, they're Bob's Better Burger. Remember Bob's Better Burger?
Yes. And then, Rose's is a staple that has made its way now across Texas into Austin.
It started there?
Yes, it did. So in Austin now, there's one location on Slaughter Lane, and then there's one up in Cedar Park. And it was really funny when we were all going to school and we were young. Every West Texan would show up to Taco Tuesdays and drive 40, 50 minutes to get there. And it was kind of like our little gathering that wasn't planned, but we were all like, we miss home,
It's really cute.
So
Sorry for the food sidetrack.
Yes, now I'm hungry. Thanks.
But University of Texas, when I got there, I actually, this makes me laugh because it's so far from what I'm doing now. I was pursuing an education on a pre-law track, and I wanted to be an entertainment attorney because what I did find with the music side of things is the business side fascinated me. Now, me clawing my eyes out over contracts, wasn't for me. I'm ultimately a creative at heart.
It wasn't for me either, so I understand.
Yes.
So it's like the highlight of the imagination of what that looks like versus the reality.
Yes.
It's like talking
true.
to stars and musicians and that, but then it's like, but what I'm doing. Oh my God.
Buried in papers.
Absolutely. So I ended up, looking for an internship. I think it was coming out my freshman year or sophomore year, and thought, I don't want to go back to West Texas for a summer.
Yeah.
I also was on scholarship. My parents were helping out where they could, but there was just not a lot of support that they could give.
Right.
And I said, I've got to also kind of make money. So I got a part-time job, and then I also started looking at internships because I do believe the best way to figure out what you want to do is by trying a lot of things.
Sure.
So I went to the career fair and I met a company that really stood out to me because they really took time to get to know me and have a conversation, shared a little bit what they did. And they were a book PR and marketing firm called Shelton Interactive at the time. And I thought, I like to read books a lot. This is kind of in the entertainment world, but not necessarily. And I know a lot about the media and PR based on my music background kind of being on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, why not? This sounds like a fun summer gig to learn something cool.
Yeah.
In that company, I ended up, working with part-time interning over the next 4 years of my college career. I also did things with South by Southwest. I also did, some work with Victoria's Secret, their pink collegiate line. They were launching at the University of Texas at the time. So I tried a lot of things, but the PR side with the book marketing. So we focused on business books. We focused on, finance. We did a lot of healthcare as well. And, that I just fell in love with. But I would say even more than the work, I fell in love with the team and the culture and the atmosphere that we had there. And so I met some of my most I would say impactful mentors during my time there. One of them, my first boss, her name is Shelby Sledge. I thought what was so unique about her is she wouldn't just give me tasks. She wouldn't just give me edits and tell me what I did wrong. She would take the time, and she was very, very busy. She would take the time to bring me into her office or come sit next to me at my desk and walk through assignments and ask me questions and share with me, feedback. And I just thought that was so unique. And that really shapes the way I try to do that with our team. Because I really learned, out of all my experiences when I was doing, all the internships, all the part-time jobs, that was the one that stood out because of, the time that she took.
And I bet it was also like, if she had a correction, you didn't walk away feeling disdainful.
No.
You walked away being enlightened, like, okay, now I understand why she wanted me to add that intro or whatever the case was.
That's right. Exactly.
That's great.
Exactly. And then, I started to see they gave me more responsibility. And this was also, I think my time there, I ended up graduating with a full-time offer before I left or before I graduated and, stayed with them until we exited the company. That was my first leadership and management role at the age of, 22, 23, which was really exciting. But that's also where, I met my now business partner, Rusty
Forgive
Shelton.
me that I said husband.
That's okay.
You probably get that all the time.
The funny thing is his wife's name is Paige.
That is so funny. I said it before the podcast that we had met before with your husband, but I meant to say partner. Okay, that was my bad.
But we always laugh about
It's been like
that
2 years.
because there's 2 pages, so it gets confusing.
That is
Well, and when you said that, I was like, I don't think I've ever met her husband, but okay.
I know. I'm glad.
Well, I thought maybe my husband was there because sometimes he tags along too.
And I'm like, I'm getting old memories, just not what they used to be, but she's.
Jen was like, was I there? I just made up this whole scenario about me meeting Paige and Rusty.
But, he was the CEO, founder of Shelton Interactive. And, he is where I learned a lot about what being a good leader meant. And really looking at, how do you lead a company? How do you build a culture that people really want to be around? And how do you serve your clients well? And he took the time to mentor. A lot of us from that team sat in his office, and got to learn from him and learn alongside him. And he is one throughout, the 12 to 15 years I've known and worked with him that has always pushed me beyond what I was ready for.
Wow.
And I very much had appreciated that. So from there, we exited the company in 2016, had a wonderful strategic buyer that we still do a lot of work with. I went off and said, hey, I want to try something different, and see. I ended up going into politics for a year and a half, which is just like insane,
Try it.
Yeah. I had some friends that were doing politics, and I thought, I probably have a different lens on strategy that they haven't thought about from my background in, book marketing and what I've seen work with, accelerating people. So I went into politics, did that for a year and a half, and my goodness, grew a really thick skin. I found a wonderful mentor there who was a very powerful woman in politics. And she was very much, a lot of times behind the scenes, but very influential. And I learned, how did she handle herself in those situations? What was her strategic view on things? How did she command a room?
Isn't strategy amazing when you start understanding?
Wow.
I've also in the new venture startup, it's like we bring advisors on, and they're often like, we've got one that's probably about 10 years older than my senior, and just listening to him and seeing, like, I interviewed a lot of individuals and understood a lot of strategy, but just kind of seeing him work, it's like,
Yeah.
So when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty amazing.
It was amazing. And, she would take the time, to go to dinner or coffee every once in a while. And it was just magnificent to learn from her and learn from her history and where she came from. And she's someone who has really been the head strategist on both sides of the aisle. So that was really something I found fascinating about her as well. But I would say, through that journey, I grew a really thick skin in politics, which was needed. I think it was hard for me at the time. If I were to put myself back into that, it was very much an emotional roller coaster. Politics is like crisis communication on steroids 24/7.
Right.
Especially a campaign. And so being able to think back on that and go, wow, I grew a really thick skin. I learned how to take a lot. I learned how to conduct myself. I learned how to influence a little bit, but ultimately, I think being in politics, for me, I had no aspiration to climb the political ladder, and thought the people that do, mad respect for them, but wasn't my thing. So I kind of started, working on, some projects on the side. I had some clients, some like past people that I'd worked with reached out, and I had reached out to Rusty and I said, hey, I'm getting some of these messages, what do you think about this? What should I do? And, he'd come to me and said, hey, I want to start another agency. I want to do this again. But I want to do it a little bit differently. And we sat down and had a conversation, and, he had been working with some key team members that had gone with him through the acquisition, and, they were cooking up some stuff. And so that was really exciting, just to look at, how do we build a new company and agency off of the foundation of what we did really well? And then how do we remove the things that we felt like we could do better or we didn't need to do in this agency? And I would say the bookmarking side of the agency, the challenge there was it's all transactional based, project based. And that's just a whole different business model. And so we wanted to look at, from an operations perspective, how do we work with clients year over year and have the fulfillment of growing with brands and companies deep and wide? Because I think that was the saddest thing about when we end a book launch campaign is we want to continue on. We want to see how this continues to grow. And so that was really what spurred the idea and the foundation for Zilker Media. And we kind of got rid of the services that, we felt like we were never really the best at. And we honed in on what value did we bring and how do we bring this into the business world, because the media landscape was just changing significantly at the time. But when we were starting the company, and I was growing into my role, one thing that I did that I think back on and cringe a little bit, but I didn't know better, and I'm glad I didn't. But I would just reach out an email or Instagram message or LinkedIn message, or I tracked people down like crazy. But any CEO in town or that I'd come across ever in work where I could get on a Zoom, do a coffee, do a lunch, do a dinner, and I would beg them for their time and just say, hey, I'm starting a new business. I'm the CEO. I don't know what that means.
I don't think you did anything wrong. Do y'all? I mean, we talk about that all the time.
I don't think it's wrong at all.
Yeah.
I think you should do this.
Right.
But it's a little cringy for the people who I was reaching out to were really important people that had a lot better things to do with their time. But what I was impressed with is, I look back, I don't think one single person told me no.
Right.
Each person gave me a moment of their time to sit down and share with me. I asked him, what was the best thing you've done for your company? What was the worst thing you've done for your company? What was the biggest challenges? What things did you not anticipate facing? Questions like that. And they were so willing just to come to me and share all of that. And, I was able to take as much collective knowledge as possible to try to get a jump start for our team.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that was so impactful just from a mentorship perspective. Is like, I think the hardest thing is the ask.
Yeah.
And I think you'd be really surprised how many people want to mentor others because they've been mentored.
Well, and backing to what Natalie just said, I don't think it was cringe at all. I think that's, especially in Austin, maybe in other places, but especially in Austin, it's what I found through doing interviews in magazines and all the things. It's building community. I found that at least around here, human nature is to teach through stories.
Yes.
Right. And I think stories have been passed. That's how we've learned through millennia.
Since antiquity,
exactly. Is this storytelling, and we have this innate want or desire. I know I do as a parent, or anybody that approaches me. It's like, I want to give you the cheat codes. I don't want you to have to go and bang your head against the wall like I did. I want you to it's like lift you up as quick as possible.
That's right.
And I think that there's this, again, maybe media, maybe misconception, maybe TV, or maybe it actually exists another, like you grew up with movies like, Wall Street, and it's like, greed is good. And it's just like, everybody's like stepping on each other to get, and at least my experience of the world is not that way. I'm sure that it is in other places, or I'm sure there is some of that, but my experience has been like yours, which is people genuinely want to help others.
Yes.
And because it's not a zero-sum game, it's like everybody, the rising tide lifts all boats is a thing. And so part of the messaging I want Gen Z to hear is reach out, do what you've done, and just, the worst thing to say is no.
Right.
But if you get 10 yeses, the amount of, like, I'm going to ask a question and I have an answer to the question based on my experience, but I want to hit your experience, is how much did you grow in those interviews as a person?
I mean, I would say, years of experience just poured into me. Right. So it was just, it was infinite, the amount of growth I had. And through all those conversations, and of course, Rusty in that partnership too, like he was another one that just was constantly pouring based on experience. And I think that's the most important thing. Clint Greenleaf, he's done that for me as well, just poured experience after experience. Groups like, I'm part of Women's Presidents Organization. They've done the same thing. Entrepreneurs Organization, I think that's another thing, is just finding community.
Right.
Especially kind of realizing, if you have a lane, find a community in that lane. If you're not sure of your lane, talk to a lot of communities and see what makes sense. But it's just, you can get so much further faster.
The image that comes to mind, you guys remember watching, and this will date me, but the Batman when Jim Carrey was the Riddler. Remember that? Remember he puts that thing on and he gets all this knowledge from all of the city.
Yes, that's exactly
That's the image that comes to mind whenever you were describing this, because that's how I felt when I was doing all the interviews and the podcasts for Entrepreneurial Rust. Every interview, every single day, it was like, oh, nugget. It just felt at times overwhelming, but just like, I just wanted to share it. It's like, oh my God, all this knowledge. I just want to be able to like put it out there. But I agree with it. It was life-changing for me. It was completely life-changing for me. I remember Dan Graham said this on one of our podcasts. On this podcast, he said, when he received his mentorship, it's kind of like you were in this city and a mentor took you to the top of the mountain. And so you look down on the city. So it's just this entire different perspective.
Yes.
And it's just nuggets like that stay with you with every conversation that you have. I remember, I can go back to talking about people starting out not knowing what they do. Everybody starts that way. And that's what I want to impress upon Gen Z is like everybody starts out with this not knowing, and you've got to gain this knowledge. Remember Tito from Tito's Vodka saying that I started this spirits movement because I was a dumbass. Because he has certain assumptions, and he went and did all these things, and we've got it on video on our YouTube. But just an amazing video where he was just like, I did all the wrong things, but it was all learning for him.
That's right.
And it turned out well,
right.
at the end of the day. But these little nuggets that you learn from different people, and it's just that stays with you, and it
absolutely
shapes not only your decisions, your strategies, but shapes your confidence. It's like whenever you're faced with something, you're like, it's not a big deal. I heard how this was handled, and you're just able to make that happen. And then it opens up doors, possibilities.
Right. That makes me think of a really specific example. And I think this is something too for Gen Z to know is no question is too small. I'm in Women's Presidents Organization, so women with businesses in Austin in our chapter. But I had asked a question to this group, and I said, I'm bringing on a sales team. We're kind of to that point in our business where it had someone, made sense to bring someone on to help us out with that. And I said, I hear there's, commission or, you're supposed to, that's how you're supposed to pay a salesperson. Right. I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, so what does that mean? And who does that? And it's such a basic question when you think about it, when I look back now. But I will never forget how many women said, let's have a call. But one of them in particular, her name's Joyce Stursh. Just to give y'all a sense, I was very new to the group. I had no idea who Joyce was at the time, but she is now an Entrepreneur of the Year recipient from Ernst & Young. She has over 500 employees across several continents. So a big deal. So, 30 minutes of her time on a call was just, I don't even want to calculate how much that would have cost her. But she got on the phone with me and she walked me through my simple questions. And then she said, Paige, I want you to think about 5 and 10 years from now. And I will tell you, here are the problems I faced 5 years from now that I wish I would have been able to solve for where I was at your stage. And then 10 years from now, here is the problems. Yeah. And I just, here I am, 7 years later from that. And yes, she was 100% right. And I was able to navigate those things because she didn't just answer my questions. She made me think further ahead and then shared her experience of what that meant at those milestones. And I just thought that, my goodness, I hope I can do that for somebody one day.
Those cheat codes we want to give.
Yes.
We want to give to advance humanity. Really. How about we jump into one of these questions? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so this is, what's your definition of success is what the question is, and it's with Angela Richard.
Our definition of success has changed, especially in this generation. What our parents thought what success was for them is not what it is for us now. There's a lot of people that don't want to have kids or are not thinking of having kids, for example. And for our other generations, that was one of the pillars of your story. Like, you have kids and that's one of your first achievements. But today, the achievements are take care of yourself, find ways to communicate, find ways to do what you love. So I'm wondering, what is your definition of success?
All right. You want to take a stab at it, Gloria? Thoughts?
I think definition of success is to really be proud of what you're doing and what you're doing for others. I think that is success. Aside from maybe a certain amount of money you want to make or, what you want to provide for your family. But I think really having that feeling of just being proud of what you're doing and what you've created. You know? That's success.
Yeah. Anybody else want
to? I would say it's really all about, are you fulfilling the impact that you're hoping to make at the end of every day? And, you know, I believe it's not, you know, what's on our highlight reel out there necessarily about what we're posting about, but, you know, as I've gotten older, it's become a lot more about, you know, did I impact, you know, this person today like I wanted to, or like the simple things. And so I think even beyond just, am I fulfilled? Have I helped fulfill others?
Yeah.
This is similar to y'all's answers, but yeah, are you living your purpose? And what is your purpose? What's your why? And is your day-to-day aligned with what your why is, why you wake up every morning?
Yeah, finding that why is something is I think you've got to go down that journey. For someone that's young, listening to the podcast, I would say, you know, it takes time to figure that out. And there's, I think, to answer this, I think that just understanding that success is going to mean different things to you at different stages in life. So you know, success at 21 might be finding that first job that, you know, or new business that you like, business idea. Something that we mentioned in our last show, though, sometimes you do a business for a money idea, and then you get in it and you get it done, and maybe it does create money, but then you end up with like, well, that wasn't fulfilling. So then you're on to the next thing of what success is. But it was successful. It did the thing, but then you're also growing along in life. Me now today, success means different. To me, it's legacy work. It's doing things that will live beyond my time, right? And impact. And so the things we're doing with Founding Up is like building stuff that is going to change the trajectory of how education is funded, like impact a bunch of people that don't even know who I am, that stuff. But also success to me is having a really great conversation with my 21-year-old daughter. It's like, you know, just like what's bugging you right now. And it's just like that one-on-one time. I was just having lunch with our last guest, and he was the same way. It's like, just right now it's his time. He's about to have his kid's about to go to college. And so it's like going to the game tomorrow. That's just their time. Is you cherish that time, which you wouldn't have before. And I think about it more now. Think about myself, you know, 10 years ago, I didn't have that same presence of mind. So it just shifts for you, for sure.
I just had a baby, and it's so different now. I mean, my success is getting home and feeding my baby. You know, it's just the simple things that I never thought that would be it. So I love that you said it's different at each stage of life. That's so true.
It changes. And you keep growing, and it keeps shifting. So.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do one more.
Success is an iteration.
This one is, work-life balance.
So at the moment, what do you struggle with the most?
Managing my time, prioritizing my time. I think I work a little too much, and I would love to be able to step back a bit and refocus and recenter between being a full-time PhD student, running my own business, working part-time for another business, volunteering for another, trying to exercise, trying to give the most to my home, to my partner, to my other goals, creative outlets. It's a lot. I'd like to get better at prioritizing my time and managing what little time I do have in ways that feel good and nurture me and rejuvenate me instead of tire me out and just make me keep going and trying to get to the next thing.
Thoughts?
I'm still struggling.
Yeah, why is she talking about my life?
And you will always have this problem. I'm just kidding.
It's true.
It's like the mystery of life right here.
It's so true.
Was that the comments?
No, I mean,
I think it comes down to, like, whenever I feel like I'm struggling with time management, I bring it back to my values and say, what are my values? Well, health is a value, family, my work. I love my work, and seeing all the things that I'm doing, do they fall in those buckets or not? And a lot of times I'm finding things where they don't, you know, and that's when I make a shift. But that's something that I've done is to come back to my values and see what's really important to me, not just important to other people and making sure they're okay, but you know, what's really important to me in my life. And it's not coming from a place of being selfish. It's that if I'm able to understand my values and prioritize my time, you know, manage it well, then I can help more people, essentially. So I think coming back to values. And for people, you know, for Gen Z, they might not even know, like, what are my values? You know, so it's a good time to reflect, and it will change as you, you know, become older. It will change, but that's always been a good point to refresh or reset, you know, my time management.
I like that. One way I do it, because I am really good at spinning out and like, I have this to do and that to do and the other to do. And so I keep people around me that can remind me what I have to be grateful for. So then, in fact, my fiance will always be like, well, what are you grateful for right now? And I'm like, well, I'm grateful that I am breathing. I'm grateful that I have health. And exactly, it's just acknowledging the things that we do have versus getting caught up in the stress of all that we have to do.
Yeah. One of my good friends, his name is Andis Shepherd. He is an entrepreneur here in town, has several businesses. He has always instilled in me that it is a mindset of I get to do that versus I have to do that.
Absolutely.
Like the same thing, like college. I got to go to college. My family did not have that opportunity. They didn't even have that lens that was even an option.
Right.
You know, but I will say I don't believe in work-life balance. If I'm being completely honest, I do think it's an integration. And I agree with you that it changes throughout your life. And there are some seasons of time where you have to just get through just the nitty gritty to get on the other side. But always looking at, you know, what is highest and best use of your time? Is there anything that you can elevate or delegate? Or another, you know, one of my mentors, Joyce, said, does that need to really be solved right now? Do you really need your attention on that now? Or can you go back to that 4 to 6 months from now? And so I think it's just, you know, taking a step back and having the right mindset first, and then saying, where's the time highest and best use for my fulfillment? Because you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of others. Absolutely. And I will say I've never been the best person at realizing that. But when it starts to impact others, you have to kind of refocus in order to be able to be productive everywhere else.
Right.
Love it. Yeah. I put myself in those shoes, and I look at time a lot different today than I did when I was 20. I think recently read a book called Levels of Consciousness, which I thought was great because it kind of talks about the things that we work on and what you grow. And one of the first things is when you're younger is you're trying to understand ego. And because you haven't filled yourself with value yet, you're still like, who am I is a big question. And in that who am I question, that ego question, there's like, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And you say yes to everything. And then before you know, you do have the burnout she was describing, because I've got all this on my plate, but I feel like I have to do it because I have that little value of self. I think with time that you start figuring out who you are, and you start discarding things. And there's a saying, and you mentioned delegation, there's a saying in entrepreneurship, is like, replace yourself as fast as you can, because whatever you can teach others to do, you're no longer doing it. So I practice diligently. What can I, even if it's like scheduling something, I don't actually have to, if I have someone that can do it for me, that saved me 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and by just being really diligent at delegating and replacing yourself. And that took some understanding, because, you know, you're paying someone to do that.
Right.
But then you just got to understand that if I can pay someone to do it, I should be doing that, because the time is the most valuable thing. So I think today I And back to what you're saying, there are times when I do work a 10-hour day. It's rare. And that's typically because I decided I wanted to do that to get to the next level of something I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
But it's more about controlling the schedule. And I'm very, when I look at my calendar for the week, giving myself time between appointments. It's like, okay, I need some drive time here. I need this. And this just kind of seeing what my week's going to look like. And then if I don't like it, I change it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want 3 of these appointments on that day. Let's move that one to next week. And just being much more artsy about your calendar, right? Just kind of creating your day. And when you do that, then you get to have conversations like this and just really be relaxed and knowing that you're really just present right here. There's nothing else I need to be doing. If we run 10 minutes over time, we do. That's cool. Because we're having such an engaging conversation. Being present is the most important thing. One thing that my life coach told me a few years ago that I really, really loved, and think nuggets that you carry, and she's like, we are in this rock that's spinning, and every day it spins, and then it's around a solar system that spins, and the galaxy, it spins around a galaxy. It's like, we're not going anywhere. It's just like, we're in the same place. Like, so this rat race of trying to get somewhere.
Yes.
It's like, just slow down. It's like, you're going to have tomorrow.
Yes.
Figure that out. So back to the point of like, do I really need that now, or can I push this off to next week?
And I just feel like a lot of what's happening online, we have so much instant gratification. We have I mean, Amazon is like a one click and it's at your door, you know.
I feel so sorry
Slowing
for some
down.
of these drivers.
I know.
Like, there's a guy that delivered a package like 11 o'clock the other night. I was like, dude.
I know. But it's just like, it's so hard to get out of that mindset, because that's the expectation. And so, like you said, the slowing down and the presence is so important to learn. And it was hard to learn when, you know, I was in my 20s. I can't imagine growing up with that at my fingertips 24/7, how hard that discipline probably is to form now.
Yeah. One of the things that I, along with learning that, though, is this other thing that we always talk about is grace, is having this grace to understand and empathy and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So when I listen to this, it's not like you should do this, you should that. No, this is where you're at. This is why you're at. And it's okay to feel that way. You'll figure it out. I think having grace for others and yourself. I mean, first of all, having grace for yourself, and instead of spinning out, being like, all right, I'm just zen, breathe it out.
All gonna work out.
But I do love the idea of the gratitude. I do the gratitude. I reset with gratitude, not necessarily for time, but sometimes it's just like, if I find my mind starts to race, like I'm thinking too much, I'm like, I need to have gratitude and then reset to a place of more calm and just knowing that what it helps me do is light touch, let go of the wheel, because sometimes I start getting too much control of things. And then I realize I really don't have control of things anyway. So just gratitude, let go, and then things always work out. So I use gratitude for a different
like a new
person.
dance move. Like, gratitude, let go, and things will work out.
There you go. This is going to be cut out. Put on a meme. We're good to go.
The new TikTok trend.
Yeah.
I was about to say that.
My online brand. No.
Well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you,
being with us. This was a really great conversation. Lots of insight. Thanks for being
Yes, thank you for having me. I could have sat here for hours, so I appreciate it. It's great.
From learning the business side of music as a teenager to building one of Austin's standout digital agencies, Paige brings a refreshing mix of humility, clarity, and sharp strategy. Her story is a reminder that your first act doesn't have to define you, and that the best leaders keep learning, asking, and showing up with purpose. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend, give us a rating, and be sure to check out past conversations with other trusted leaders and change makers. Every listen helps us keep growing this community. If you want to share your thoughts or be featured as a Gen Z contributor, visit the show notes to learn how to get involved. Until next time, keep exploring the uncharted.